Hi everyone, thanks for coming to the Decentralized Storage panel. I'm Sam, one of the founders of Arweave, and very glad to be able to moderate this panel here with Doug from MainSafe and Evgeny from Fluence. So do you want to take a moment to introduce yourselves?
Sure. Hi everybody, I'm Doug Campbell, as Sam said. I'm COO of MainSafe. And I've been with the project, or involved in the project from the community side of things since 2014. It was the first time I came across the project, and I've been working with the company now for a couple of years.
Yeah, also short introduction. Hi everyone, I'm Evgeny from Fluence, and Fluence we're working on an open source decentralized cloud computing platform, and we have also like a storage as part of our infrastructure.
Great, thanks. Yeah, so I think the thing that sort of glues us all together is we're all kind of working in the decentralized web space. So although you're doing kind of compute, we'll keep it like not just storage, but like, the decentralized web in totality as well as that. Yeah, so maybe you could take a moment to introduce, I guess, the technology behind your projects, what it is exactly that you're attempting to achieve, the vision for 10 years, that kind of thing.
Okay, so with MainSafe, what we're building, what we're involved in building is an open source project called Safe Network. It's a decentralized peer-to-peer network whereby individuals around the world download the software, connect computers, and then share that computing power, bandwidth, etc. Originally, the company started in 2006. The ICO, as it became known, we carried out the second ICO in the world back in 2014, a couple of months before Ethereum, and made a few mistakes, learned a few lessons that way, as I think we all do in this scene. But we've been effectively trying to solve a problem, and that problem, seen by the founder David Owen for a long time ago, was that he just didn't believe the internet would scale. He didn't believe that servers were the answer. In fact, he thought they were very much the weak point. So how could we get something that scaled, that involved individuals and defended the privacy and security of every individual who wanted to use it moving forward? So we've been working on this open source project for, 13 years now. It's huge amounts of R&D, obviously, taking place during that process. We are at the stage we've had a Alpha 2 network out running, which has a number of nodes which ironically are managed in the database by us at this point in time whilst we test out certain aspects of that. And I don't know how heavy we want to go into the technical details around this, but just by way of caveat, I'm not a developer, so forgive me if I'm kind of speaking at a higher level on some of these things. But that's been out, that's been running for a couple of years. We've had a number of test nets out there. And we are coming up to release a number of stage releases on the road to final release now. And yeah, I think that's probably a quick summary.
Yeah, and something about what Fluence is. Really, like our story is probably like 2 years old. We started from building a decentralized database when Ethereum appeared, when like all the dApps started emerging, and we spent on research like about a year or more. We released a couple of technical papers, and then we realized that we designed a generalized computation platform that can work with databases, but that can run any kind of code that you can compile to WebAssembly. So essentially, Fluence is a kind of you can think of it like a generalized plasma connected to Ethereum as a security chain, but Fluence itself can accommodate any conventional open source software, can run databases, can run other software, and so on. Yeah, that's it.
That's great, thanks. So Doug, this is a slight tangent, it sounds kind of interesting. What was running the second ICO ever like?
I wasn't there, but I was on the community side of things, and it was a roller coaster. Yeah, I mean it was very exciting because I think it was one of the first indications that there's real appetite out there for. It was our project in that case, but as we subsequently found out, it's a lot of projects around the world. There is an unmet need, and demand for some of these things. It's not just all about money, and absolutely that's not what our project is about. But it was the first opportunity that so many people had to take part in something that they identified with, from an ideological level. This was something and remains something that, our intention is to change the world with this. This is not just a little piece of software that some people will be able to use in a very niche use case. So yeah, there was good points, there was bad points, but it certainly gave us the opportunity to discover the community that was out there. That perhaps had been quieter at that point in time as well. People putting their hand in the pocket and actually taking part in something with their own cash is an indication that there's some interest as well.
Yeah, certainly. That's very interesting. Okay, so I have kind of like two tracks of questions. One's more technical, and one's more sort of social. So maybe we'll try with the technical one, see how we go, and then.
You want to introduce yourself and talk about
Okay, sure, yeah. So I'm Sam. I dropped out of a PhD to start the Arweave project a couple of years ago. It's a permanent decentralized web. The idea is that we essentially apply all of the properties you get with blockchain to all of the contents found inside the web. We launched around a year ago, and I think we just passed around 51,000 websites and web pages posted inside the system around a week ago. That's Arweave in a nutshell. Okay, yeah, so one of the interesting things about the decentralized web that most people that are looking at this problem have kind of coalesced around is this idea of content-based addressing, right? So we shouldn't look for a piece of software at, facebook.com/index.html. Instead, we should go to some hash, and then we should find it in the network somewhere, and then it doesn't really matter, as we were kind of saying about servers, where the data is truly hosted. We get it from any server, which will be able to give us the data. But the real question here is, well, how do we make that fast? And it seems so far that the approaches haven't been too fruitful. Let's be real about it. Like everything's mostly based on Campbell, which was built 20 years ago. So I was kind of interested to hear how Native are approaching that problem. And how relevant that is to Fluent, because I think you guys have like a slightly different model.
Actually, we use Campbell, some secure modifications of Campbell for a little bit different purpose of like distributing receipts from storage among the Fluent network. But I can talk a little bit later about it. Like briefly, the Fluent architecture is hybrid architecture. Fluent's nodes perform computations, and to transfer data between these nodes in a secure way and have the data availability, we actually outsource the data availability to decentralized storage like Arweave. Right now we use both IPFS and Swarm. Actually, not IPFS and not Swarm give you the guarantees right now of the availability because they don't have the incentivization layer yet. Filecoin and Swarm incentivization layer on the live. Arweave could give us, but Arweave has some limitations, and probably Sam can speak about that. But the model is we rely on data availabilities that provided by file storage, and we rely on the model. Then, if we put some data on the file storage, we need to get some receipt that will be used to that will be used for punishing the node on the decentralized storage if it loses the data. And for distributing these receipts also, for having them available on our network, we use Cademia as a network organization mechanism among our nodes. It's not very relevant to content others.
It's interesting, as mentioned.
So when it comes to technical things, I could vaguely explain it, but I think it would be doing people a disservice. I mean, in general terms, yes, absolutely we do. We've kind of evolved the system with XOR addressing. We've got data saved in different places around. In terms of the performance of the system, we won't know till the full thing is live, is the first comment. But in terms of what we've seen so far from testing, the responsiveness of getting data back is certainly very positive because of a number of reasons. Part of the reason is because we have the deduplication, we have caching, so there's more copies of that data. in case people don't know anything about the safe network, the way that the data goes onto the network in the first place is that somebody uploads the data. Before they do that, it's basically split into a number of chunks that are self-encrypted with each other, and then those chunks are sent out to addresses, etc. And those addresses are then managed by different nodes around the world, and then those nodes themselves, the network itself is autonomous, and the nodes that have responsibility change according to a reputation system, elders, and everything else. So it's not geographic, it's around the world. From what we've seen, it's very performant. But again, I hesitate to say anything because this is crypto. I could sit here and say it's light speed. Until it actually launches fully, you're not going to know one way or the other. The other thing is with the data, we've got lots of different types of data, and I think your project's very much identified something as well, which I think is very important about this, perpetual, permanent data, the requirement. I don't want to speak too much about it if you're going to. But in terms of stuff like link rot and the way that we're looking now at websites historically, and the fact that a lot of this information, valuable information, has just disappeared. And we just can't let this happen as a society moving forwards. So we have perpetual data, I suspect similar to your permanent data, the permanent web. So there's a number of reasons for that, and we just need to make sure that kind of concept is really successful. It doesn't matter too much on which projects are looking at this, as long as we all are looking at this one way or another, because this is, sorry, going off on a slight tangent here, but this is the key for open science. This is the key for collaboration around the world. This is the key for innovation and the ability of a community to come together and to solve the problems. We've got to make sure that this kind of information can get through national barriers. We've got to make sure there aren't firewalls that restrict that passage of information. And that's very much one of the goals of what we're doing. So I'm not sure that really answers your question. Well, for a little bit of a tangent.
It was interesting, so that was. And it kind of leads to my next question, which was one of the things that seems to keep coming up when you think about these decentralized web-style networks is persistence. How do we actually incentivize persistence? And one of the things that Arweave does in this session kind of makes it not so great for the Fluence use case is like the data is truly permanent. We've engineered the system such that you basically make an endowment when you put a piece of data into the system, then pays for the storage of that data perpetually as the price of storage declines. You get kind of interest on the money that you've already put aside. But I'm kind of interested to see how you guys you deal with this persistence problem. Or potentially just limit it. Right? So the other way you go around it is you just say, okay, so they should be around for at least 2 years, this kind of thing.
For us, we only require from the decentralized storage to keep data for a particular period of time. And it's important because the verification on, the computation verification on the network is happening asynchronously. So there is a real-time nodes who have a consensus for each operation, and then there are other nodes, other type of nodes, like we call them fishermen, and they come one after another, and they form kind of verification chain. And during this a verification chain, the data should be available, and there should be the opportunity for anyone to find this data, to download it, and to repeat all the computations and get the same result. Otherwise, there should be possibility to raise a dispute. And that's why, for us, until the verification chain ended, the data should be available, and that's the only requirement. After that, it can die, because it's just a log of the code execution.
Yeah, I think this fisherman model is totally underlooked at in this space. It's fantastic as far as I'm concerned. It's very cool.
Thank you.
It's true, it really is. It's the closest we have to multi-party computation that actually works at scale, as far as I've seen.
So on Safe Network, then people are uploading data. They're paying SafeCoin, basically the token on the network to pay is a one charge upload cost. They have the option then to have permanent data, perpetual data, but they also have the requirement. If something is public, if it's meant to be seen by the public, then the default, and just the reality is that that is seen as perpetual data, that is stored forever. It's not time limited in any way. And the reason behind that thinking is, it's probably obvious to many people, but as soon as you put something public on the web, or you share something publicly, you shouldn't really have the right to delete that, or at least that ability is fallacious if you are able to delete something, because at any point in time, as soon as you have something that's digital, anybody can screenshot it, anybody can share it, anybody can walk off, copy it, etc. We're just dealing with digital information here. So it's a slight change in the way that society perhaps thinks about some of these things, but it's crucial as well to have that defence for open science, for collaboration, and kind of building on the shoulders of researchers who've come before, etc. But yeah, in terms of the model, there is that one challenge to upload. The question would be where do you get the token, and similar now to some other projects that have come afterwards, I suppose, but also very different in certain ways, is the way that you get the money by farming. You're basically sharing your hard drive, your bandwidth, etc., and you're rewarded on the basis of that. So what's interesting about that, I think, and is different from a lot of other perhaps decentralized storage projects, and just to caveat, we see ourselves as far more than just storage. I think there's lots of discussions we can have about that. But the price of the upload is set by the market. It's set by the network itself. It's not set by the user saying, I want to spend this amount of money and I want to choose these computers to store my data in some kind of decentralized Dropbox type of model. For us, it's utterly essential that nobody knows where that data is, where those shelves of data are anywhere in the world, because that's where the anonymity, privacy, and really the security come in. As soon as you were aware of where that was, then there would be an attack factor at that stage. But yeah, so that's the idea of Safeguard originally, was that obviously anybody, the network was built to work on home computers. So it's very inclusive. It should be quick to install. It's not like setting up a server or something that requires a certain level of technical knowledge. This should be something that's very straightforward indeed, and therefore inclusive. Ultimately on mobile, not initially, but that's a big goal. And therefore we create this whole kind of economic system within the decentralized web as well, as we see it in terms of storage for these purposes.
Interesting. Yeah. You kind of very briefly mentioned a couple of times about caching and data access where data doesn't have borders, which is a very interesting topic. And I was thinking about what Edward Snowden was saying earlier. He made the point that we should, at least in theory, be able to get to disguise our protocols such that they don't look like our protocols, and have them running over 443 over SSL. And essentially be indistinguishable from normal HTTPS connections, and so we should be able to smuggle data in and out of, say, China or Russia without problems. But the thing in practice, the difficult part is always the gateways, from what we can see. So you always have to have a jumping in point. It's a decentralized web, right? But you have to know somebody that's in the web to speak to in the first place, to get access to it and to start talking to everyone else. So I'm kind of interested to see what your guys' thoughts are on sensitive resistant gateways.
I think it's a pretty hard question.
It is, sorry.
There is another question, there is a question about GDPR compliance and the legal compliance, that your data should be located in a particular country. We address this partly. For example, in our network, there is a real-time layer. The nodes computations in real time. When they serve an application and the users do request this application, these nodes respond in real time. And these nodes are completely controlled by application developers. So if I'm a developer, I want to create a dApp, or some scalable CryptoKitties, I can literally choose that I will use these nodes that located in Germany for to serve a German part of my application. So in this way, we do not try to hide the protocol. But we just say, okay, like if the government here require us to do this, we allow developer to choose nodes. And this is not this not compromises the security model, because these nodes are still independent, it's still trustless, they still have to operate correctly, and they will be verified by other nodes. But the other part, the verification part, is much more trickier, because these nodes, they should be chosen completely randomly among all the network participants, and they might be outside of the country, and that's a problem. So in this case, we probably would go to the direction of compliance. So, for example, to have allow to have a Germany part of Fluent's network which operate partly independently, because it's all open, it's all transparent, it's all open source, all the transparent runtime and everything. So it's pretty hard to hide this.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I guess then, you start having really complicated questions around, they're almost shards. There's the German shard influence and the Spanish shard, and then you have to work out. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
super hard.
That's definitely super hard. Yeah, at this moment.
So I'm not able to be technical, I suppose, at all. I do know that in terms of what we use, so we use Quick2B, we had Cross previously, so a way to get computers to speak to each other effectively across the national boundaries. We've run tests and we've seen that we can do that. That's that crypto thing where someone says, I don't know how, but we do it. So I do have colleagues who know far more about that in the audience. But in general terms, the GDPR thing is really interesting, I think, because there's so much, obviously, and GDPR has obviously been God, who likes it? Nobody. But the reality is that it's a movement towards the right sort of respect for personal data. It's nowhere near, correct in its application, etc. But it's a question we often get about, well, what's the GDPR status of data on the network? And the reality is that at no stage does any human unsafe have any knowledge of where those shards of data are in whatever country those might be. So if anyone has to be GDPR compliant, it's going to be the same network itself, which upon launch is entirely autonomous and has no centre. And we get to that kind of down argument about, well, who do you actually take to court over something like that? So, but the reality is all that data, any data that's on somebody's computer is only ever a section. So if it's one file, we'll call it a fifth of that file. It's encrypted, and it's the computers that are responsible for it. That responsibility moves around the whole time. So GDPR is a fascinating one. I think it's a really good example of the law desperately trying to catch up with what's going on, and it's never able to be ahead of reality or actually deliver something that's fit for purpose, I'm afraid.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think you kind of brought up an interesting point earlier, which is once something is publicly published, and of course you can take screenshots of it and so on and move it around like that. Is it in the public comments, and then do you have the same right to be forgotten? Or even if in the law you have this right to be forgotten, is it actually reasonable in practice? So yeah, super, super interesting questions around that.
Yeah, it's a massive topic, that, I suppose. I actually think we're at this cusp of a societal change, and I guess we always are in technology, aren't we? We're always at the, are we in a paradigm shift? Are we, how does society respond? And I think with something like the right to be forgotten, let's not go into technical, boring details of it, but the reality is that, we are all living in a very public way as soon as we are leaving a digital trail behind us. And this is why privacy, and I'm preaching to the converted here, this is why privacy and anonymity and the ability to go about your daily business without, or whilst choosing what to share with people is utterly essential. We just have no option here. This is a problem that has to be solved. by someone, but I suspect by all of us collectively. And we've spoken about this before, about, you know, it really doesn't matter so much which project we're all involved in, and this is why this kind of conference is so important, because ultimately there will be a number of different solutions out there, and there'll be a different number of use cases for different purposes, but we have to solve this. This is non-negotiable. And I'd like to think we've got incredible talent already in the scene, but we need so many more people out there. I could go on, but I won't.
No, it's fair to say.
It's interesting your opinion on that. What's your opinion?
On which bit specifically? On which bit specifically, because it's kind of broad.
I mean, the last question about the protocol that we're discussing.
Oh, protocol disguising. Yeah, the best method that we've come up with so far is really, really bizarre, actually. It's just don't necessarily depend on the internet infrastructure itself as the transport medium. So we're kind of starting this side project, I guess, called Are We But the HF, where we're trying to set up a network of HF transceivers that move blocks and transactions around the world, such that if, for example, Russia decides to separate itself from the real network, making an RU-net at the border gateway protocol level, then we'll still be able to get the blocks and transactions into affected countries and out of. So they should be able to stay in sync with the network. But this is the kind of stuff you don't want to be doing in 2019. Like, these are not fantastic ways of addressing the problem. I think Snowden had a really interesting idea, which was, well, let's just like put everything inside SSL, and then it just looks like normal HTTPS traffic. But there's some pretty like major flaws with that. For a start, everyone still knows who you're speaking to, so you can farm out all the IP addresses of everyone in the network, and then you can just ban those. That's hard to get around that. And also, like HTTPS itself, so SSL, it's pretty centralized. I don't particularly want to bake SSL into the protocol at a level that we can't take it out later. Because you're just centralizing trust on the small few authorities. And there are a few decentralized SSL type, or at least decentralized certificate trust networks that people are building, and we're pretty excited about that. But practically speaking, we're kind of worried that in reality, you're going to get this situation where, okay, you've built it, you've shipped it, it's launched, and it works in theory, but it'll take 20 years to get the browsers to actually integrate it. And unless it's in the browsers, you know, every single user of your application is going to come along and it's going to say with a big red warning, you don't want to be here, don't use this. And we've trained people, as we should have done, they're like, you don't press proceed anyway. So I think, that one's... Okay. I actually think the solution to this might be a protocol called Telex that was created in like 2005. The basic principle is that in ISPs inside different countries where they want to protect free internet access, you might create basically fake IP addresses, pretty much how it works. That you can create an SSL connection to this fake IP address, and it looks to the gateways that you're talking to as if you're speaking to this IP address, but it doesn't really exist. And what's happening in the background is once the SSL connection is established, you can then say, okay, now bounce me to where I actually want to go. But no country that I know of, or any ISP, has actually implemented Telex. So, and it's like super, super obscure. It makes this conference look like, I don't know, the center of Silicon Valley or something. Okay, oh no, we've only got a minute left. Okay, right, I just wanted to ask quickly, what's next for your projects?
Mainnet.
When?
Probably beginning of next year. Right now we're on the testnet. Like we have kind of minimal viable product to. It allows to run applications. You can go and find like the network dashboard. It's really nice UI. You can use ready components, databases, and so on. You can upload your application. You can run it on Fluence, but it's still on the test mode. There are no guarantees. It can all die and burn, but yeah, we work on that.
For us, we've got a big release coming out in the next, we'll say, couple days. We'll say days. So basically, people are able to run vaults at home, ability to see, test, save coin is a thin slice of the network. It takes things forward substantially from where we've been before. and we will then be rolling out a number of other things as we move to beta. And finally, we're on the road to full release after 13 years. So it's
Congratulations.
there's a lot of long nights, but it's from the team. But we're getting there, and it's been very exciting few months.
Nice. All right. Well, thank you both very much. That was fun.